Hi, welcome to Wanderlusting Lawyer. Today I'm going to be talking about a topic near and dear to my heart, and that is food on the Camino de Santiago, but specifically dinner options while you're hiking the Camino. I've made some food videos before. Check those out if you're interested. I did a video on foods I love on the Camino, a video more generally explaining how meals work on the Camino. But today I'm specifically going to address dinner because I think this is the subject that people have the most questions about in terms of how does it work. You know, if you're on the trail and you're stopping for lunch, that's kind of self-explanatory, but how does dinner work once you're in and settled for the evening? So I sat down and thought about all the different dinner options I saw people take advantage of while they were on the Camino, and those are the ones that I'm going to talk about. So the first option, and know before I start that this will vary, of course, by the route that you're on. So as usual, a lot of times my advice is more tailored to the popular Camino Francés, but I have walked lesser traveled routes, the Aragonés and the Inglés. And so when there's maybe a piece of information I have that's specific to those quieter routes, I'll, of course, make that differentiation. But your first option, assuming you are in a larger town or city or someplace with some type of a restaurant, is to just simply go out to dinner for tapas, which are like little, small plates, little kind of appetizer size dishes, or they're called pinchos when you're walking through Navarra and the Basque region, or just like regular dinner, right? The regular menu. Did regular dinners most of the time on the Camino Inglés, for example. I didn't come across too many Pilgrim's menus. But tapas are great. Like, really take advantage of those in the first 10 days that you're on the Camino Francés, because, well, they're delicious and you have so many options a lot of times, and it's great. You get a chance to sample so many different foods. One thing to note is that in general, dinner is eaten significantly later in Spain. So some restaurants might start open around 8 or 8:30, but in general, Spaniards don't start having dinner until 9, but more commonly 10, 11 sometimes, especially on the weekends. So if you're trying to get an early dinner in a restaurant that's not catering specifically to pilgrims, that may be a challenge. So just keep that in mind. The second option is similar, but it's going out to dinner at a restaurant, but for a menú del peregrino or a menú del día. And I made a specific video as well addressing the menú del peregrino, so I'll only just go over that really quickly. But it's basically like a prefix menu, as we would say in the States, in our bad French, that typically includes your your starter dish, which tends to be pretty hearty on the Camino anyway, then your main dish, a dessert, bread, water, and another drink. Sometimes it's a glass of wine, sometimes it's like half a bottle of wine, or you can have a soft drink, or sometimes a beer. Usually there are different choices. This is most common on the Camino Francés, at least of the ones that I've done. It may also be common on like the Primitivo or the Portugués, which are more highly traveled. There was a place, I think just one place I stayed in Villanueva in the Camino Aragonés that had its own restaurant, and they did a great pilgrim's menu. So that was always my go-to choice when I was on the Camino. I'll get into cooking and stuff like that later, but I really didn't have the energy or the interest to just cook pasta or something simple. Like, I love the food in Spain. I love the food anytime I travel, and it's extremely affordable, especially if you find these menus. So that's what I was always trying to take advantage of. Now, a good distinction to note is, so menú del peregrino are going to be probably the least fancy options, and they tend to range between 10 and 14 euros for all of that food. Sometimes there will be a menú del día, which is a similar format of service, but the choices are just a little bit higher end. So it's a couple euros more, but you have more choices or sort of more elevated choices. And so in Jaca, I remember I had a short walking day and I ate at a restaurant and did a menú del día. I think they had a menú del peregrino as well, but the choices I wanted were from the menú del día. And I think in total, it was the selections I made were about 18 euros. So again, for the quantity and quality of food plus wine plus dessert, it's a fantastic price. So that's your second option. And like I said, that's one of the ones that I loved if there wasn't the fourth option, which I'll get to. So the third option was to eat dinner at your albergue, either with, something small you've carried. Maybe you bought it at lunchtime and you brought it to eat at dinner, like a sandwich or something, or cooking in the albergue. And so the caveat here is that this has changed significantly since COVID. A lot of albergues no longer provide cooking equipment. In the 3 albergues I stayed at on the Camino Inglés, only the first one did. The other 2, or public albergues, the other 2 did not provide anything. They did have kitchens with like microwaves and sinks and stuff, but there was no cookware to use. So, but on my Camino Francés in 2018, I saw this very frequently. A lot of times people were cooking. The most common was people would pick up pasta or rice and maybe like a tomato sauce, just super simple, sometimes a couple veggies. And where you can get those are, if you're in a town that has a supermarket, especially a city, you can find really anything you could need. You may come across markets that have fresh fruits and veggies, and if you're walking during the day and you want to prepare something at night, it might be worth, picking those up and just finishing your walk with a little extra weight, but knowing you're going to eat that at night. So I think your best bet if you want to cook most of your dinners on the Camino is to consult certain websites like the one that I've mentioned a lot, Gronze or Gronze, GRONZE.com. It's in Spanish, but there's like a little, I think if the albergue has cookware, they have like a little plate and silverware icon you'll see on the page. That should be pretty up to date, but honestly, the best thing to do if you can is to call the albergue and just say, you can ask, ¿hay batería de cocina? I think that's how you say that. I've never actually asked a specific question, but that means like, is there cookware or the things to cook with? Or more specifically, ¿hay cubiertos y ollas para cocinar? And I can write those down below so you can see how it's written. But if, batería de cocina, you're trying to figure, or even just, ¿puedo cocinar en el albergue? ¿Se puede cocinar en el albergue? Can you cook there? And they'll be able to tell you if you're able to in that specific one. The only 2 times so in, 34 days on the Camino Francés, only had a meal in an albergue, like cooked like that, twice. One was actually, it was not sponsored by the albergue, but it was someone like from town who would come every night. He was a chef and he would see if a group wanted to, I think it was 10 euros to pitch in, and he made a delicious dinner, dessert. That was in Estrella, so that was just a totally random event, but I loved it. It was a lot of fun. And then in the Donativo I stayed at, in the Meseta, I can't remember the town name right now, an Italian couple had offered, they were making a big pasta dish, and they asked if I wanted to join them, and so I was really enjoying talking to them, so I said, sure, that would be lovely. So those are the only 2 times I ate a meal like that in an albergue. But I did eat other meals in an albergue, and that's number 4, and that's what I'll talk about now. And these are family-style meals that the albergue itself puts on. So on the Camino Francés, these are really, really common they could still be like public albergues. They're not the municipal ones, with like 50 beds, that cost 8 to 10 euros a night. These are, they still might have that same price, but then you're paying an extra price typically for dinner. But again, it's like 10 or 12 euros, and it could be like a big paella. It could be an incredible meal like the one I had in Zubiri, which I talk about that in my Hidden Gem Albergues video. it's a wonderful opportunity to like get to spend quality time with other pilgrims at the end of the day. Some of the best conversations I had were during those dinners, and you get to try, you know, dishes that are maybe a locale, like from that specific place, or that the recipe has been in the albergue owner's family forever. So in general, you sign up for those when you check in. You don't have to call ahead or anything. Just when you're checking in, you let them know, yes, I want to eat dinner tonight, which I understand is different from the gîte system on the Le Puy chemin that goes through France. I've heard there that it's really important to reserve your gîte the night before, because then the owner knows how, like, it's accepted that you will eat at the gîte. It's like half board, so you're paying for dinner. So the owner knows how much to go out and get and prepare. But at least in Spain, you don't have to let them know ahead of time. You just let them know when you're checking in that you'll be having dinner there. And then sometimes they ask about breakfast as well, if they have a breakfast offering. And again, I highly recommend those. I think I only didn't go like one time when it was offered, just 'cause it was our last night before arriving in Santiago, and we had a different plan. But they're so fun. Highly recommend them. Just really good time. On that note, I'm like dying to do the Camino and the Le Puy route in France, because I've heard the food is incredible. Like, I like the food in Spain. It can get a little repetitive for me, and I did make a video on veggies on the Camino. It's a big debate. Some people say they're easy to find. Some people say they're hard. I think they're hard, at least of the quantity and type that I enjoy eating in the States. But again, I'm not buying in grocery stores. I'm not cooking my own food. So I'm not really complaining about it, because, you know, I try to adapt to the situation that I'm in. One tip in terms of when, you know, I know a lot of people say, hey, I'm looking for places with that pilgrim dinner. Like, I want to have that experience. Look for albergues that have a restaurant attached to them, right? Like, if they, you know, you can find this information online, but if they have an attached restaurant, they're almost certainly going to do a pilgrim's dinner. Like, that was the one I had on the Aragonés. Or no, I had two. I had one in a Donativo. No, I had three. Sorry. I had actually several on the Aragonés, which was awesome. But apart from the Donativo, the other two had their own restaurants that people would come in from town. And so that's pretty much a sure bet that not only is there going to be a pilgrim's dinner, it'll probably be like that menu, that Peregrino style that I mentioned, with the starter, the main course, the dessert, drinks, and bread. So I'm just looking at my notes to make sure that I covered everything. But yeah, I think I mentioned this, but yeah, so the only chance you won't have to cook your own food is if there's no grocery store or market in the town you're staying in. So that's something, like I said, you'll want to plan ahead. You'll want to stop at a market or grocery store beforehand and buy what you need, and things like pasta or whatever, you know, those are easy to take with you. And I would say too, if you know you're going to be staying at places that don't have their own cookware, but they do have a stove, it might be a luxury item for you to pack like a small, like full, I'm sure they make them now, like collapsible pan or something just to boil water. So those are all my thoughts on dinner options on the Camino. Let me know if you have any questions, or if you have anything to add that I left out. I hope this was helpful. Thanks guys for watching. And as always, say it with me, buen camino.